Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss an interesting topic, that is language and speech. We have come to the end of the chapter of our CNS lectures. In higher functions, our final chapter will be the language and speech. So in this video we are going to discuss them under the following headings. So understand what is language and speech, and most important is we have to know what are the cortical areas involved in the language and speech, and what is the mechanism for spoken language as well as the written words, and finally the language disorders, which is the aphasias. So first, getting into the topic, what is language? Language is nothing but a method of communication. Even a sign language is a communication form, so that is also considered as a language. So language means it is any form of method of communication. Whereas speech, what does speech mean? It is the ability to express the thoughts with articulation of the sounds. So if you articulate it and try to produce sounds, and then only it is called as the speech. Whereas language can be a simple form of sign language also. So language, it is generally divided into a verbal language as well as a written language. These are the advanced form of language that we have. So coming to verbal language means I tell you something, you try to listen it and you understand it and you reply back something. That is the verbal form. Here hearing and speaking is involved. Suppose you are reading a book and writing the notes from it. That form of language and speech is called as the written format. You are reading from a written text and writing it. So these are the two forms of language. This is very important, because I will be telling about the areas which are specifically involved for the verbal as well as the written language. Now coming to the different areas in cortical cortex which is involved in the language and speech. So considering this front part as a frontal lobe, we all know that if we see something and write it, that involves the visual cortex also. So we have to understand the visual cortex is in the occipital region, which are the primary visual cortex area number 17 and secondary visual cortex area number 18 and 19. Suppose you are hearing something and understanding it. For that we need an auditory cortex to be intact. So this is the auditory cortex which is present in the temporal lobe. So now coming to the specific language areas. The first and foremost important region which is essential for understanding a language is the area number 22, which is called as the Wernicke's area. This is the most important region which is required, Wernicke's area. And this Wernicke's area has the confluence of information from all the regions like the visual cortex, auditory cortex, and not only from that, it confluences the information from all the areas in the brain. So that is why this Wernicke's area is considered as the most advanced and the developed part in the brain. Even though frontal lobe has more significance, scientists are putting more importance on frontal lobe, still it is the Wernicke's area always wins. The Wernicke's has such a good amount of comprehension which is not found in any other animals also. So that is why Wernicke's area is considered as the most advanced part in the brain. So this Wernicke's area is important. Now coming to another area which is area number 44 and 45. This area all of you might be knowing it already. It is nothing but our Broca's area. So these are the two primary areas which are involved in language and speech, and they are connected with the help of some fibers, as you can see here, which is called as the arcuate fasciculus. So let's try to add up some more information to the same diagram. I will suggest you to remember two more areas also which are also very important. That is, as you can see here, area number 39, which is called as the angular gyrus. It is called as angular gyrus. I will tell you the importance of these areas also. This angular gyrus is also called as Digerine's area. And as you can see here, there is one area which is very close to the Broca's area. This area is called as the Exner's area. This area is called as the Exner's area. So totally we are going to remember four areas. One is the Wernicke's area number 22, then Broca's. Along with that we will be remembering two more areas. One is the angular gyrus, which is called Digerine's area, and Exner's area. Now coming to the function of all of these areas. So basically for any language to be understood and talk back or write back, we need a sensory part which is called as the receptive areas. So we need a sensory or a receptive area, and finally we have to execute the action. That is done with the help of motor or executioner areas. There are two areas which is called as the receptive areas or the sensory areas. They are the Wernicke's and the angular gyrus. This Wernicke's is the one which is very important for understanding the speech. So for a spoken language, this Wernicke's area is very, very important. For a written language also, Wernicke's area is important, but along with that, to understand a written language, we need some more help from the angular gyrus, which is helpful in perception of the written words. So Wernicke's area, it is located in the temporal lobe, whereas angular gyrus, it is involved in the parietal lobe. And this Wernicke's area works along with close association with the auditory cortex because it is primarily understanding the speech. So it always works with the auditory area in relationship. Now coming to the execution part. I have to talk back, that is the verbal form. Another thing is I have to write back, that is the written format. So for talking back, we need the most important area, that is the Broca's area. That's why this area is also called as the motor speech area, and it is important for word formation and articulation of the muscles. So it is helpful in articulation creation also. For writing a written format, for example, you study something or you hear something and you write it. For that, only Broca's is not sufficient. We need help of another area, which is nothing but our Exynos area. So it is involved in motor writing. Now coming to aphasia. So what is aphasia? This disorder in any kind of speech, writing or reading is called as a aphasia. So any kind of language disorder is called as aphasia. Before going into the aphasias, we have to understand what is the pathway for a spoken language, what is the pathway for a written language. For a spoken language to be understood, first I have to hear it. So the primary auditory cortex will hear it. Then it will send it to the Wernicke's area for understanding. Then this Wernicke's area, through the arcuate fasciculus, it will communicate with the Broca's area. And with the help of Broca's area, if I ask you a question, you will be able to answer it back. So with the help of Broca's area, it will go to the primary motor area of speech. Then finally the muscle of speeches will be activated and they will be able to produce the words. Whereas coming to the written words, I told you two more areas are also involved. So first thing is you have to visualize it. You are looking at a textbook and you are visualizing it. It will be sent to the Digerines area. Before going into the Wernicke's area, it is going to the Digerines area. Then after that, as usual, it will go to the Wernicke's area. And from the Wernicke's, it will go to the Broca's via the arcuate fasciculus. And before writing it, you need help of one more area, which is the Exynos area. So this will go to the motor area and finally hand coordination will be done. So in a written word, I need help of a Digerine area as well as a Exynos area. So that is the difference between a spoken language and a written language. Now coming to the most important aphasia, we are going to discuss in detail about the two aphasias. One is the Wernicke's aphasia, another one is the Broca's aphasia. So what is the function of Wernicke? Already we saw that it is the one which is receiving the sensory information. It is a receptive area. So this area, whenever it is damaged, what will happen? It is also called as sensory aphasia or receptive aphasia or fluent aphasia. Why fluent aphasia? Because in this person, the Broca's area is intact. So he will be producing a lot of words. But will it be meaningful? It will not be meaningful. Why it will not be meaningful? First of all, the person will not understand your question at all because the Wernicke's area is responsible for understanding. So here there will be a comprehension of written as well as the spoken language is absent. Both comprehension is gone. You will not be able to understand it at all. Either it is a written word or it is a spoken language also. He will not be able to understand. That's why they have used two beautiful terms which is called as a word blindness. He will be able to see the word or letter, but he will not be able to identify it. Don't think he is blind. He is not able to comprehend. So it is called as word blindness. And spoken language also he cannot understand. So it has a specific name which is called as word deafness. So here the subject will be hearing something, but he will not be able to make meaning out of it. That is called as word deafness. And he will do something called as word salad. He is not understanding anything, but he will be trying to create some sounds which will look like as if the words have become a salad or mixed with each other. And sometimes they will produce new words also, which is called as neologism. The most important thing to be noted in Wernicke's is the comprehension is lost, the understanding is lost. Now coming to the Broca's aphasia, it is just the opposite of Wernicke's aphasia. Here the person is not able to express, that's why it's called expressive aphasia, motor aphasia or non-fluent aphasia. Here the comprehension will be completely intact because my Wernicke's is intact. So the comprehension is preserved, So if I ask you some question, you will be able to understand the question, but will you be able to respond it back properly? No. Why? Because your Broca's area is affected. So what will happen is there will be a telegraphic kind of speech. There will be so many pauses in one sentence. For example, normally we take a few seconds to complete one sentence, but this person will have a lot of yeah, why. This kind of so many gaps will be there or pauses will be there in his speech. To complete a few sentences, he will take minutes together. This type of speech in Broca's area is called as telegraphic speech. Now coming to few other forms of aphasias, they are called as conduction aphasia, wherein the arcuate fasciculus is damaged. In this, usually there is not much of defect, only a few repetition of words is not done properly. Because the entire fibers are not affected usually, the arcuate fibers, if few fibers are affected, there will be a problem in repetition of words. Then there is something called as global aphasia. What happens in global aphasia is there is a severe damage in both the Wernicke's as well as the Broca's area. So there will be inability to comprehend language as well as the formulation of words. It is nothing but the combination of Broca's and Wernicke's aphasia together. Then there are some kind of aphasia which is called as transcortical aphasias. What happens here is depending upon the damage that is done, there will be a variable kind of presentation. So these are the few other forms of aphasias, but the most important ones are Wernicke's as well as the Broca's aphasia. I hope it's clear. Thank you for listening to the video. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends also. Thank you so much.